today we're looking at isosceles triangles and the characteristics of them and how we can use those properties of isosceles in order to solve problems. Okay, and we are going to do a few proofs, but they're not bad. So first we're going to start with labeling an isosceles triangle. Okay, so our base would be xz. Oops. Okay, isosceles triangles either have base or legs. Okay, so the one that is not the base, or the two that are not the base, are called the legs. Okay, the angles that make up the base are called base angles. Leaving your last angle at the very top, your vertex angle. What do you know about the base angles of an isosceles triangle? They're congruent because they open up to the same side length. Okay? The measure of your legs should always be congruent, which makes your base angles congruent as well. Okay, so base angles theorem. Okay, the B got cut off by the hole punch, but that stands, or right there, that word's base. Okay, if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite the sides are congruent. And that's what we just talked about. The legs are congruent and the base angles are congruent. But you don't know the base angles are congruent unless you know the legs are congruent and vice versa. Okay, the converse of the base angles theorem is if two angles of a triangle are congruent, then the sides opposite these angles are congruent. Okay, so the base angles theorem is if you're given two sides congruent, then the angles are congruent. Whereas the converse is if you're given two angles congruent, then the sides are congruent. So you're just working forwards and backwards. Okay, so number one, okay, if our top degree is 60, the two bottom degrees add up to what? 120, because the sum of the three angles has to be 180. And because of these markings here, that indicates that that's an isosceles triangle. Okay, so what does that make angle B and this angle here? 60 as well, because you just divide 120 by 2. Okay, because the remaining angles have to be divided equally among our base angles. Okay, if this is 30 and this is another isosceles triangle, what's this angle? 30, which makes this angle what? 180. Not 180. 120. Okay, so here we had our vertex angle, subtract from 180, divide by 2, and you got 60 and 60. Here we had one base angle, multiply it by 2, and then subtract from 180 to get the vertex angle. Okay, so A was 120 and B is 60. Okay, number 2. Okay, I know that this is 80 and I know this is 50. Together, the sum has to be what? For all three of these is 180. So how many degrees is left in angle X? 50, which makes this an isosceles triangle because we have two angles that are congruent. Okay, and if you have two angles congruent, then by the converse theorem, you have two sides congruent. Okay, so set your two sides equal to each other. So what does y equal? 5. Okay, so this is the converse of base angles theorem. And this one was your base angles theorem. So when you're going from sides to angles, it's the base angles theorem. When you're going from angles to sides, it's the converse of the base angles theorem. Alright, proof time. Alright, statements on the left. Reasons on the right. Some of these are review. They have nothing to even do with isosceles. Okay, start with your given. CW and SD bisect each other. Okay, if CW and SD bisect each other, what does that tell us? CP is congruent to PW, and what else? SP is congruent to PD. And what would be the reason? Definition of bisector. So I'm going to make that marking. Okay, what else do we know based off this picture?
Angle CPS is congruent to CPW.
Angle CPS is congruent to angle DPW. Why is that?
Vertical angle.
Vertical angles.
Side angle.
Side angle side would prove that your triangles are congruent. What else could you have used? Hypotenuse leg, because you have the hypotenuse of both and a leg of both. And then obviously our right angles. Okay, we're trying to prove that CS is congruent to WD, so how are we going to go about that? Very good. So this is like a review from last time. CP, CT, C. Questions on 3? Okay, so if you chose the HL route, you would not have done step 3. You would have gone straight to 4 with HL congruency theorem. So either would have been right. Okay, 4. 4 is getting into our new stuff. So CA is congruent to AT, TB is congruent to BD. What kind of triangles do we have? Isosceles. So somebody tell me something. Based off the fact that they're isosceles triangles. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. What else?
Angle 5 is congruent to angle.
Okay, and what would be our reasoning? Base angles theorem. Okay, so I'm going to mark those. Okay, what else do you know? So 4 and 5?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why is that?
What is my angle?
Okay, so remember our end goal is to get 3 is congruent to 6. So now we know 4 is congruent to 5. So all 3 of these now are the same.
So can we just go straight from there then, since we have proved it all?
If 5 is congruent to 4 should be congruent to 3, right?
Okay, so 4 is congruent to 3. We already have that one.
So then 3 is congruent to 6.
We've got to do 2 steps. You can't just go straight from 3 to 6.
Do you prove that the triangles are congruent and
No.
Can you just say 3 is equal to 4 and 4 is equal to...
You have to do 2 transitives.
the transitive?
So if 3 is congruent to 4 and 4 is congruent to 5, 3 is also congruent to what? 5.
Oh, and then you go...
So that's transitive, or, yeah, transitive. Okay, so now that we know that 3 is also congruent to 5, what can we say? 3 is congruent to 6. Okay, you can't go straight from 3 to 6. You've got to make sure that you first declare that 3 is congruent to 5 because 4 is congruent to 5. And we're done. Yeah.
Did we say on the number 4 that, or number 3, that 4 is congruent to 6?
On number 3, 4 is congruent.
Like after that, row to that of the first transitive?
So if you went to 4 is congruent to 6, and then you could have done 3 is congruent to 6, yeah. Questions on 4? Okay, this one is super important. Just want to make sure I put some emphasis, you know. Make sure it stands out. And you don't have a proof on your skills check, so hopefully it's super important somewhere else.
Gotcha. I got you.
Okay, number 5. Calculate AP if the perimeter of AYP is 43 centimeters. What do we know? It's isosceles. How do we know that? Converse of the base angles theorem. Okay, so we know these sides are congruent. So what else do we know?
AY is congruent to AP.
Right? So how do we figure out the perimeter of AY? Oh wait, how do we figure out AP if the perimeter is 43?
43 minus 13 divided by 13.
Nice, that was almost like in sync. So 43 minus 13 divided by 2? 15. So 15 centimeters here, 15 centimeters here, 15 plus 15 plus 13 is 43. Yes, because you would not be able to solve this had they not been there. Because you never want to assume that like this would have been a base. Okay, number 6. Calculate the measure of angle T, so your vertex angle. How do we proceed? 180 minus 117 because these two angles are supplementary. Because they form that straight line. So what is the measure of TMW? 63. Sweet. What else do we know? TWM is also 63. How'd you know that?
Base angle theorem.
Base angle theorem. Okay? Leaving what in our vertex angle?
180 minus 63.
180 minus 63 minus 63. 54 degrees. Awesome. Okay, we're almost done. Number 7, given triangle MHR, MH equals 20 centimeters, MR equals 2x plus y, and HR equals 3x minus y. Find x if necessary. Round your answer to the nearest thousandth. Okay, what do we know? Why do you know that?
Because MI equals the base.
Converse base equals 0. 60 degrees and 60 degrees. So that means the side.
Like 60 degrees away, how would you know it's 1 degree?
Very good.
Oh.
So, what do you know about all the sides?
Congruent.
They're all congruent because it's equilateral. Okay, so, guys. Okay, so they might have tried to trick you and maybe they only gave you these two. Okay, because they want to make sure that you know that that's 60 degrees as well, making it an equilateral. So there really was never like a base side given to you. Okay, but we do have a base side, so how can we go about solving this system? Set what equals to 20?
Like the side.
The side. So 2x plus y equals 20. 3x minus y equals 20. Then what? You could substitute or we could eliminate because you have a plus y and a minus y. So if I add these two together, 2x plus 3x is 5x. Y plus a negative y cancels. 20 plus 20, 40. So x equals 8. You also have done substitutions. Say you set y equal to 20 minus 2x and then solved it that way. Okay, it only told us to find x, so we're done. Okay. Number 8. Okay, you have 3y plus 2, 65 degrees, and we're trying to figure out what y equals. What do we know about our missing angle?
It's
65 degrees, because they both open up to your corresponding congruent sides. Okay, so these both are 65. Their sum is what? 130, which makes what left in this angle? 50. So 3y plus 2 equals 50. Subtract 2. Awesome. Okay, in your groups, do 9 and 10, the last two. If you've already done it, check with your table, your answers, to make sure that you guys have the same thing. So you're doing 9 and 10.
Oh yeah, it's plus one negative one.
Y plus 11 is equal to 5y plus 1. 1 minute!
That makes a lot more sense. I don't know where I'm going.
Okay, for y, how did you solve for y number 9? Okay, what did you end up getting for y? What did you get? 11. Okay, you know that this was 72 degrees as well because those two angles were congruent, leaving 9x equal to what? 36, and you got x equals 4. For 10, okay, you know that these two sides were congruent, so hopefully you set these two equal to each other. Okay, so what did you get for y? 4. And then how did you solve for x?
2x plus 5 plus 3x minus 5 equals 180.
Okay, so you added up both of your base angles with your vertex angle and set it equal to 180. Okay, when you combine all your like terms and solve, what did you get for x? 25. Very good. Okay, like I said, there's no proof on your skills check. Raise your hand if you want to take it in like 15 minutes. Okay, that wins. Okay, so we'll take it in 15 minutes, and then the rest of the class after the skills check, you'll have to work on your review. So, skills check is going to be at 3:25. 3:25. Okay, so you can work on the isosceles assignment from today, or you can work on your test review and find the problems pertaining to isosceles. It is up to you.